Welcome, graduates of the class of 2009, parents, grandparents, spouses, siblings, relatives, and friends. Good morning and welcome to the 2009 Winter Commencement Ceremony of the School of Journalism and Mass Communication. I'm Dulcie Strawn, Senior Associate Dean of the school. Our Dean, Jean Folkerts, wanted very much to be here with you all today, but she's home recovering from knee surgery. She sends her best wishes to you. I'd like to recognize my colleagues from the school's faculty and staff who are here today. Will all of you please stand and be recognized? I would now like to recognize two members of our faculty who have been promoted to full professor. Would Professors Kathy Packer and Lucila Vargas please join us here? Promotion is a signature point in a faculty member's career. Being promoted to full professor indicates that a person has achieved a national reputation, continues to serve the school and the broader university, and offers students the highest accomplishments in terms of teaching. Writing on the 200th birthday of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, William Snyder, a JOMC alum, noted in his book, Light on the Hill, that the talented faculty at Carolina came to love and respect and serve this place and the thousands of students who passed this way. They never forgot for long its essential purpose, Lux et Libertas, light and liberty, the university's motto. Snyder also wrote that academic freedom meant freedom to differ, to wrestle with the complexities of searching for the truth, to tolerate error where truth was left free to combat it, all in the best Jefferson tradition. It's my hope that these two faculty, along with others in the room, will continue to educate students about the need to recapture, generation by generation, the spirit of free expression, both on campus and in the world at large. Dr. Packer and Dr. Vargas will both receive a copy of Light on the Hill, Bill Snyder's History of Free Expression at the university. First, I'd like to say a few words about Kathy Packer. Kathy Packer has been a core citizen of the school for many years. In fact, Professor Packer may be one of our most successful professors in conveying both skills and passion to her students. Dozens, maybe hundreds of graduate students have caught the research bug from her. The reach of their scholarship, whether as legal scholars or not, has spread widely across our field, enriching our knowledge of law, respect for the First Amendment, and awareness of our collective duty to rely on sound law as a basis from the freedoms of our republic. Professor Packer is a Johnny Appleseed of legal scholarship, a contribution far beyond her own published scholarship. Hers is a strong record of service, excellent teaching, and insightful scholarship, deserving of the recognition of promotion to full professor. Congratulations, Kathy. Lucila Vargas couldn't be with us this morning, but I'd like to tell you a few things about her as well. Dr. Vargas joined our faculty in 1994, and since that time, she has been the key to producing innovative research and active engagement with the Latino community in North Carolina. Her scholarship, which centers primarily on issues of gender, culture, and class, have added significantly to the body of knowledge in this area. Her recent book, titled Latina Teens, Migration and Popular Culture, has received wide praise for the quality of its scholarship in an area that is just beginning to be fully explored. Dr. Vargas has introduced many of our students to issues of social change and diversity through the courses she teaches. She also contributes substantially through her work with local organizations such as La Palante, a Carborough organization for Latino and Latina teens. Congratulations goes to Lucila Vargas. We are pleased today to have as our speaker Deborah Potter, an alumnus of the School of Journalism and Mass Communication. Deborah is the president and executive director of NewsLab, an online resource for radio and television newsrooms. She is a veteran journalism trainer, reporter, and writer. From 2003 to 2004, Deborah served as executive director of RTNDF, the research and training arm of Radio Television News Directors Association. Deborah is the former faculty associate at the Poynter Institute, where for 3 years she led writing, reporting, management, and ethics seminars for professional journalists. She regularly conducts training workshops for the National Press Photographers Association and the International Center for Journalists. Since 2000, Deborah has been a featured columnist for the American Journalism Review, writing about broadcast news. Her work also has been published by RTNDA communicator and news photographer. She's the author of Advancing the Story, Broadcast Journalism in a Multimedia World, RTNDF's Incoming, Advice for the Newly Named News Director, and Ready, Set, Lead, a resource guide for news leaders, as well as the Handbook of Independent Journalism. She's also co-author of the Poynter Election Handbook, New Ways to Cover Campaigns. Deborah spent 16 years as a network correspondent for CBS and CNN. At CNN, she reported on national politics and environmental issues. She joined CNN in 1991 after 13 years at CBS News, where she served as White House, State Department, and congressional correspondent. She also was a frequent contributor to the primetime CBS News magazine, 48 Hours, and hosted the interview program Night Watch. She holds an undergraduate degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and a master's degree from the American University. And I would like to also thank Deborah for her loyalty to the school and also her characteristics that show that she is a persistent reporter. She listened to the news about the impending weather conditions that they're happening way up the East Coast, and as she was coming from Washington, D.C., she called us Friday morning and said, "I think maybe I should get an earlier flight out." So we thank you from the bottom of our hearts, Deborah, for being with us here today.
Thank you all so very much for coming out on a Sunday morning for a very, very important occasion. It is truly an honor to be with all of you today, with the faculty, family, friends, and of course my new colleagues. So thank you for inviting me. I do have a lot of memories of this place, so it's a great honor for me also to be back in a place that I love very much. And I have one question for the new graduates in the room. What exactly were you thinking? How many of you majored in journalism? Oh, most of you. Okay, so you majored in journalism and the business as we once knew it is imploding, right? How many of you majored in advertising? All right, you've majored in advertising, and as far as I can tell, the bottom has kind of dropped out of the market. Anybody major in PR? You majored in PR and you're leaving school without having to do a case study on Tiger Woods? Okay, wait, maybe that was on the final. So one thing I do know for sure is that these graduates are not leaving Carolina without a very clear sense of the reality that awaits them. And let's face it, in some ways, that reality is not pretty, especially in journalism. 1 in 5 newspaper jobs lost since 2001. Is that scary? Television newsrooms shrinking, advertising revenue down sharply, more of it's moving online, but the calculus now is not enough, not yet, to be sustainable. Okay, I'm not going to dwell on this, in part because the title of this talk is A View from the Future. So we're going to try to get there, but it's also not as if these graduates, you all, are the only ones facing an uncertain future. Anyone graduating from college right about now is in a tough spot. The biggest winners at this point appear to be grad schools. I am quite, yeah, it just took a second. I am quite sure that you or your parents just spent a boatload of money to get a degree from a great university, and now you are probably wondering, what is it worth? Is anyone going to pay you to put the skills that you've spent the last 4 or more years acquiring, to put those skills to use? Will they pay you enough to repay your loans? Okay, will they pay you enough so you can finally stop eating ramen? The answers, if you're keeping score, are maybe, not anytime soon, and eventually. You all know what awaits you, right? Stress, low pay, hard work, few opportunities for promotion. I got that list from a survey of new journalism graduates, like many of you, only it was conducted in 1989. So, 20 years ago, young people just like you left college with journalism degrees knowing full well what they were getting into, and they did it anyway. So, what were they thinking? Either they were A, not very bright, or B, they had the audacity to believe that what they wanted to do was going to be worth the sacrifices they knew it would take in order to do it. I choose B. You know what they knew. You know it's going to be tough. It always has been, even way back when I started out. Yes, the journalism world today is dramatically different from what it was when I left Carolina with a degree that you can't even get anymore. I had a BA in radio, television, and motion pictures. It sounded very forward-looking at the time. It's kind of quaint now. And, you know, you got to be proud of something that is known or was known around campus as ruddy vump. But if you had asked any of us what the future was going to look like, I'm not kidding, it really was, what the future of journalism would look like almost 40 years later, not one of us would have envisioned where we are now. The internet, mobile video, I mean, who could have predicted? We didn't even have personal computers. No one had invented them yet. And phones were not smart, by the way. I will say we didn't have to call an operator to make a connection, so it wasn't that long ago, but a lot has changed. So let me give you a quick tour of the first newsrooms I worked in. We had manual typewriters. They were very good for your hands. You do know what a typewriter, you know, you put the paper in and you roll, no, never mind. Anyway, it was very loud in newsrooms back then. It's really quiet today, so that's a big difference. Reel-to-reel audio tape and videotape that was 2 inches wide. Okay? To edit, you sliced a chunk out of it with a razor and taped it back together. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty on the air either, but we won't go there. Film cameras that had to be reloaded on the fly in a dark bag, and you were blind when you did it. So the camera people had great sense of feel. A processor in the back of the building that reeked and ruined at least one story a week. It would come out blue, or it wouldn't come out at all. You know, it would be like in the bottom of the processor. You had to carry change for something called a pay phone. And you had to dictate your script in from the field, and it took forever. I could swear there were stone cutters back in the office, you know, chiseling our words onto tablets. And we had wire copy that also reeked of chemicals. And I'm here to tell you that while going through some books recently, I found an old piece of wire copy. It was something about the Academy Award winners from the late 1970s. Why it was saved, I have no idea, but guess what? It still smelled. So there are some things I really don't miss about the old days. And for all of that, I loved it. They paid me so little, I think I ate meat once a week or so. 6 years later, I finally made it to the network. My first on-air job at CBS, and I worked from midnight to 8 a.m. for 2 years, anchoring news on the radio, and I loved it. If you're passionate about learning what's really going on, something new every day, and if you delight in telling great stories, in my view, there could not be a better time for you to get into journalism or any of the associated fields in mass communication. Frankly, just between us, I am a little tired of all the moaning and groaning about the future of newspapers. I mean, truthfully, if we stop printing news on dead trees, I am quite sure we'll come up with something else to put in the bottom of the bird cage. What I am much more interested in is the future of journalism, and I think that future is bright. It's bright for all of you who are going into that field because the tools you have at your disposal have never been better. And the information that you're going to need has never been more accessible. Yes, there are fewer jobs of the old-fashioned kind available in news organizations, but you don't need to work for one to do great journalism and have it seen by a wide audience. In fact, the internet, as you know, makes your potential audience almost unlimited. That's a little scary, but very exciting. You will need more skills than we did, though. When I applied for reporting jobs, no one expected me to go out and shoot video and edit. It will be expected of these graduates, whether they work for a traditional news organization or for a website, or frankly for themselves. And that's exciting too. You will be able to tell stories in words and pictures, in graphics, in maps that bring stories to life. You will be the ones inventing new ways of providing information and connecting people. Just as the Des Moines Register did after a tornado wiped out a third of a nearby town last year. Their coverage of what happened to Parkersburg combined shoe leather reporting with crowdsourcing. Their online package merged text and video with interactive maps, and they created a database of homes damaged or destroyed so they could track the rebuilding process over time. They're still doing it. It's impressive. You will be the ones finding new ways of funding good journalism, and Lord knows we need some. But you'll do something, as inventive as Dave Cohn did when he founded Spot Us. His idea was to ask the public to sponsor journalists to cover stories that they would like to read about. And that struck some people as either a pipe dream or, frankly, just a little dangerous. Maybe funders would have too much influence over what got reported. But it's working. And last month, a Spot Us funded story about pollution in the Pacific Ocean ran in the New York Times. More than 100 people gave an average of $10 each to make it happen. Pretty exciting. I think you will be the ones discovering new ways to use social media, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or something we haven't even thought of yet. If there's one area that news organizations and other media-related businesses are hiring in, this is it. According to Forbes magazine, about 200 social media directors have been hired in the past 2 years at newspapers, book publishers, magazines, television news stations, PR firms, and so on. Sky TV in England even has a Twitter correspondent. Interesting job title. So who knows what new jobs you'll create? I think you understand what many journalists who have been in this business for a long time either resist or just don't get. And that is, our role has changed. It is different now. I've heard it described as moving from being the sage on the stage to the guide on the side. There's really no point in trying to be a gatekeeper, is there, when information is all around us? There's no fence anymore. What do we need a gate for? So our role, inevitably, is going to be something else. Phil Meyer, one of the great journalists and teachers associated with this school, who is, for many of us, a mentor, I think he put his finger on it years and years ago when he said that in the old days, it was information that was in short supply. And now we're swimming in it. What's in short supply now is attention. So we're pulled in every direction, right? How many of you are sitting in front of a computer on a daily basis with, 6 browser windows open and your email going ding, 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 and maybe a Twitter feed streaming, and oh, by the way, the TV's on in the background and your cell phone is on your desk buzzing with an incoming call, all at the same time? Well, that's what it was like in my office when I was making some notes about what I wanted to tell you this week. I think that's the real world, and so it's very hard to know what to pay attention to or to be able to pay attention to it all. And I frankly believe that while everyone says, well, but young people can do it, you know what? They've got the same kind of brains we do. I mean, they're younger, but it's the same brain. So while we are learning to do more with our brains, there's still some limitations, and I think that's to some extent where we come in. We can be the guide on the side. And I feel sure that you all will be the ones to take advantage of the endless possibilities. You will launch hyper-local websites that will combine the wisdom of the community with investigative reporting, with muscle to hold the powerful accountable, and I'm convinced you will make a living doing it. And you will have fun, which is really important. Because you know what? When you get into a business like this, where the entry-level pay is low, your opportunities are not so clear, you darn well better have fun. You might want to build your business chops. I think that's always a good piece of advice. Learn some programming skills. Thank goodness you came out of a school where you could learn that, and I hope you did. But it's not too late. Thank goodness for the web, right? We can learn anything if we really set our minds to it. You'll definitely need a lot of flexibility and a strong desire to keep learning, because things are changing really fast. But for all the change that is coming at us, kind of at hyper speed these days, I think some things stay the same. And what stays the same are the core values that journalists have always needed to bring to their work. Those have not changed. Those never will change. So, in the spirit of condensing, I'll name 4. The first one's curiosity. I think a good journalist is always somewhat astonished by the obvious. You don't ignore things just because, well, everybody saw that. Everybody saw that, and what does it mean exactly? So you have to be curious. Take nothing for granted. Always ask why. In some ways, journalists are a little like 4-year-olds in that department. And listen to the crazies. Don't hang up on them. They may be right. Don't delete their emails right away. There might be something to it. Okay? Commitment. Don't give up. Even if a story doesn't pan out right away, stay on it, collect string, look for evidence. Do not be easily intimidated or deterred. Be tough. At the same time, be caring. That may sound counterintuitive. I just told you to be tough and determined and all that. But journalists at heart, another little secret, at heart, they are do-gooders who happen to hate math. Am I right? Okay. So you need to care about your work, care about the people you cover, care about your audience, care about getting it right, care deeply. If you don't care, why would anybody else care? Ring Lardner, I think, said it best. He said, "How can you write if you can't cry?" You need that caring streak very strongly. And then you need courage. Some of us are old enough to remember when the CBS anchor Dan Rather kind of made a joke out of that word by attempting to end every newscast with courage. I think it lasted a week before he was publicly humiliated in the press. But great journalists really do need to be courageous because they have to get past the obstacles thrown in their way and to tell stories that people may not want to hear. It took courage and commitment for a television reporter at WWL in New Orleans to investigate the city's nonprofit housing agency that was supposed to help poor and elderly victims of Hurricane Katrina. And what he found was a lot of waste and fraud, and it prompted a federal investigation of its misuse of funds. It took courage to do that in New Orleans after the storm. This was an agency that was supposed to be helping people. There was evidence that people needed the help. Why probe? He probed. It took curiosity and caring for a reporter at the Las Vegas Sun to expose the high death rate among construction workers on the Strip and the lax enforcement of regulations, which led to changes in policies and improved safety conditions. That was worth doing. In a time of shrinking resources and cutbacks and layoffs and questions about the future of journalism, WFAA television in Dallas won the first ever gold baton for a local station in this year's DuPont Columbia Awards for 3 local news investigations. Outstanding work. Byron Harris uncovered corruption and waste at the U.S. Export-Import Bank, making fraudulent loans to Texas companies. Brett Shipp exposed how coaches and principals and teachers routinely changed grades for high school athletes so they could qualify to compete even though they were failing in class. And Shipp's examination of the danger of aging gas pipelines forced the companies involved to remove faulty couplings to prevent more explosions and probably saved lives. These are the kinds of stories that make a difference. And obviously they also win awards. They're traditional journalism at its best, and we should celebrate it. But we should also celebrate the work of Jacqueline Dupree, whose blog, JD Land, covers the area around the Washington Nationals baseball park in my hometown. She's not a journalist, although she does happen to work for the Washington Post. She's a techie. She runs their intranet. But at heart, and her undergraduate degree makes her a historian. And she decided almost 10 years ago to chronicle the transformation of a segment of town that she knew was going to be changing. It's about 2 blocks south of where she lives, so she doesn't even live in this neighborhood. But she looked at it and said, this is going to change. Let's make a record of what it was and keep a record as it changes. So 4 years after she started this little project, taking pictures on every street corner, the announcement came that the Nats were going to build their ballpark there, and her blog traffic went through the roof. Who knew? I mean, people from all over the country, all over the world were checking on her blog because she had established herself as an authority. She features stories on her blog from other news organizations. She links to original documents and government databases. In fact, her stuff is so good that other government agencies link to her. She has a zippy interactive neighborhood map, along with an extensive photo archive. And Dupree also does a lot of independent reporting. She goes to all the little neighborhood, group meetings and neighborhood regulatory group meetings and in her spare time, and she says there's never any other journalist there. It's too small for the big paper. In a big town, too small. It's news over the fence. That's what she calls it. It's what people are talking about. The paper can't cover all of that. But just because they can't doesn't mean it's not news. Lately, she's been writing about plans to open a fast casual restaurant. Now, in this area that has no sit-down dining to speak of, this is a big deal. She's one of the few dependable sources of information about a neighborhood the big paper mostly ignores, so is she a journalist? You bet she is. She doesn't traffic in gossip. She checks her facts. She keeps her personal opinions to herself. She is legit because she does journalism. And I think that's where we're going. We're going to be, in the future, in a profession where journalism is what you do, irrespective of where you do it. To a future in which your credibility depends on how you do what you do, not where you do it. A journalism professor wrote in the most recent issue of the SPJ magazine, Quill, that he talked to some of his students about what they thought about the future. And one student put it best, I think. She said, "The future is terrifying, and I'm excited to write about it." Yes, you are taking a risk by going into a field that is so unsettled, but what else is new? The truth is, this profession needs risk takers, and it always has. It needs skeptics who question everything, and it always has. And it needs idealists who believe that asking questions can lead to positive changes, and it always has. Journalism, you see, is a noble profession. For many of us, it's a calling. It's a public service, and it needs you, the best, the very best of this generation, to practice it and to protect it. As long as you have what it takes, the curiosity, the commitment, the caring, the courage, journalism will survive, and it will thrive, no matter where we get it from. You're in charge now. Congratulations to all of you, and good luck.